Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Middletown Township, Pennsylvania, January 30th, 2024, 7 p.m. Michael F. Moan was a 68-year-old retired civil engineer for the Army Corps of Engineers. He lived with his wife and his son. On the night of January 30th, Michael's wife had called police to report that she had discovered her husband's dead body inside the bathroom, but his head was missing. In the bathtub were found a machete and a large kitchen knife. Officers eventually located the victim's head wrapped in a plastic bag that had been put into a cooking pot in a bedroom near the bathroom. Elsewhere in the house, police found bloodied rubber gloves on a desk and a trash can. Michael's son, Justin, wasn't at the house when his wife had called the police. Justin had already left in his dead father's vehicle, a Toyota Corolla. Justin fled the scene of the crime and drove over 100 miles to Levittown County until he came to a Pennsylvania National Guard base. Armed with a gun, Moan broke into the base. Police were able to track Justin through his cell phone, and they eventually located him. Police said that he was armed at the time of the arrest, but he didn't resist. Now, this lunatic had just decapitated his own father, then broke into a military base with a gun. The police have him cornered, and they see that he's armed, but they don't shoot him dead. If only he had been black. By the way, there's no word on whether the cops took him to Burger King afterwards. I'm just asking for a friend. Now, here's where things get weird. The police would later find out that 90 minutes before Miss Moan called them, Justin had been on YouTube giving one of his typical anti-government rants. Only this time, he decided to use a prop for his little show. He held up his father's head, which was in the plastic bag. The video had been up online for several hours after the murder, being seen tens of thousands of times between YouTube and X. In the video, Justin ranted about his father being a traitor because of the housing crisis, I suppose, and how tough Justin's life was. He also claimed that he was the President of the United States and a messiah. During the video, Justin also held up his father's head in the plastic bag and said his father was now in hell for eternity as a traitor to his country. YouTube eventually removed the video, citing it as graphic content. Graphic content? Not because he had murdered someone, but because it was considered to be graphic, the video he showed of his father's head. So if he had killed his father off camera, I guess it wouldn't have violated YouTube's guidelines, right? Of course, as we all know, what YouTube considers a violation is completely arbitrary. They attack channels for good reason, little reason, or as the black media has frequently seen, no reason whatsoever. But I digress. Justin Moan was charged Wednesday in Bucks County with first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and possessing an instrument of a crime. Amazingly, he's being held without bail. Typically, people with genetic immunity from the law are released ROR. Now, a little bit of background about Justin. In 2020, he published his call to action online, arguing for a hypothetical violent revolution against traitor older generations for the debt and unemployment burdening those who came after them. He wanted a revolution against anyone born before 1991. So basically, as a millennial, he wanted to wage war on half of his own generation and all of Generation X. I guess he never bothered to learn who exactly the baby boomers are. But that was only part of his motivation. We'll get to the main motivation in a moment. Justin actually went to college, believe it or not, and he got a degree in agribusiness management. I don't know for sure, but that sure sounds like one of those useless degrees. Between 2014 and 2020, he had a series of short-term dead-end jobs. In 2022, Justin sued the U.S. government for $10 million. He said that his college degree didn't lead to him getting a better job because he was perceived as, quote, an overeducated white male. He also said that affirmative action had hurt his career prospects. He had to move back in with his parents at the age of 32, which I'm sure didn't improve his disposition. So you have this racist right-wing snowflake who was unable to make himself worthy of a job. And because white privilege apparently didn't work for him, he went into a murderous rage over that. Now obviously this creep is a right-wing nut. That kind of goes without saying, but we notice that there's always a racial angle to these stories, and this one is no different. In his video, he ranted that, quote, America is rotting from the inside out as far-left woke mobs rampage our once prosperous cities. Did you get all that? Overeducated white male, affirmative action, and woke. That train's never late. Phony white victimhood, which is the manufactured basis used to justify anti-black violence. So we can thank Ron DeSantis and Christopher Rufo for yet another act of heinous violence promoted and encouraged by the racial hysteria that those two reprobates have spread. This Justin character also claimed to be a messiah of what I don't know, so he was simultaneously having delusions of persecution and delusions of grandeur. That's gotta be a first. Of course, when covering stories like this, I always get a few slow coasts who ask why I'm talking about this when none of the people involved are black. See, some folks simply don't understand that for these white supremacists, while their targets are always black people, and black people are who they want to kill, they often will kill other white people simply because they're in proximity. Heather Heyer, a white woman, was murdered by a white supremacist in the Charlottesville riot back in 2017. Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 white men and wounded a third in Kenosha, but the only reason he was even there was because he wanted to go after black protesters. From Timothy McVeigh to the Columbine mass shooters, we always see these killers fixating on black people, but they'll go and kill a bunch of white people if they think it will bring attention to their sick cause. That's how these white supremacists operate. America is a segregated country. They don't live near black people, so when these white supremacists decide to vent their violent rage, it will often be at other white people because they're the only folks who they actually have any contact with. But that doesn't change that these are racist murderers enraged at the mere existence of black people. One of Jason Moan's neighbors and childhood friends said that Justin had been going on anti-government rants for 10 years and saying all sorts of weird things like he should be president. The white media kept saying that this guy was from Middletown Township. Different outlets kept listing that as the place that he was from, Middletown Township, or they would mention the county he was from, Bucks County. But Middletown Township is part of Levittown, a suburb of Philadelphia with an infamous reputation. Now, for those who don't know, Levittown was called America's first suburb. It was a racial covenant town made back in the 1940s where only whites were allowed to live. In fact, it was specifically created for the sole purpose of establishing enclaves in the North where black people were prohibited from living. When the first white family did move to Levittown, a mob of hundreds of white people, including children, laid siege to their house, busting out their windows and threatening their lives. And it's no accident that Levittown is in Pennsylvania. As the Cajun Skeletor and fellow racist James Carville said, Pennsylvania is Philadelphia in the east, Pittsburgh in the west, and Alabama in between. William Levitt, the real estate developer who Levittown is named after, built a number of suburbs across the north, and they were paid for by the federal government. After World War II, the federal government gave subsidized mortgages to GIs coming back from the war, but only the white ones. So the first suburbs, and every suburb afterwards, has been funded by the U.S. government using black people's tax dollars. The suburban angle is crucially important here because from Columbine to whatever you want to call this latest act of barbarism, these places have been churning out these little suburban psychos and they keep committing the most savage crimes imaginable. We can be disgusted by this latest atrocity, but we can't be surprised. When you praise privileged people, what you get is depravity. Though no matter how many times these atrocities happen, it's never enough for the dominant society to decide that now they need to do something about these racially privileged barbarians. Instead, they've decided to just sit back and wait until the next racist suburban degenerate tries to get ahead. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: David Williams, Bo Eldridge McLean, Turk McKenzie, Gordon Gates, and Ulrich Panton. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.